In a secluded, humble village surrounded by dense woods, there lived a poor woodcutter and his family. The woodcutter and his wife had 7 sons, each a bundle of energy and curiosity. Life was simple and tough, with the family living in a small wooden cabin just beyond the edge of the village. Despite working long hours in the forest, chopping wood to sell, the woodcutter barely earned enough to provide for his family. Among his sons, the youngest was so tiny that he was affectionately called Little Thumb. Though Little Thumb's size made him seem weak and insignificant, he was remarkably clever, often observing everything quietly while others overlooked him. The village faced especially tough times as a famine struck the region one harsh winter. Food was already scarce, but now meals became meager, and hunger was a constant gnawing presence. The woodcutter's wife spent many restless nights worrying about how they would survive. The little bread and porridge they could afford quickly vanished, leaving empty bowls and sad, hungry faces. One evening, after a long, difficult day, the woodcutter and his wife sat together by their small, dim fireplace. Their sons had already gone to bed, too tired and hungry to stay awake any longer. The woodcutter sighed, his face etched with worry and sorrow. "I don't know what we're going to do," he murmured, his voice barely audible. "We can't feed them all. If this continues, they'll all starve, and so will we." His wife, heartbroken, nodded silently. She had thought about this painful truth herself, though it tore her heart to admit it. After a long, agonizing silence, she whispered, "Perhaps we'll have to let them go. We could lead them into the forest and leave them there. Maybe someone will find them and take them in." The idea was unbearable, but the woodcutter knew his wife was right. They felt there was no other choice, but unknown to them, Little Thumb had been listening. Though he was tiny, his heart and mind were keen, and he understood the desperation in his parents' voices. A shiver ran down his spine as he grasped the seriousness of the situation. Quietly he crept back to bed, his mind already working on a plan. The next morning, Little Thumb woke up early, his heart pounding with determination. While the rest of the family slept, he slipped outside, feeling the cold earth beneath his feet as he picked up small, smooth, white pebbles. He filled his pockets, making sure he had enough to leave a trail. When his parents finally gathered the family and led them toward the forest, he stayed calm, though his heart ached. He loved his family, and he understood their struggle. As they walked deeper into the woods, Little Thumb subtly dropped one pebble at a time along the path. The sun cast long shadows through the trees, and as the woods grew denser, an uneasy silence settled over them. Finally, the woodcutter and his wife led their sons to a small clearing. "Sit here," they told the boys. "We'll gather wood and be back soon." But as they disappeared into the trees, the boys began to realize they might not return. As the sun dipped lower, casting a cool, blue light through the trees, the older brothers began to tremble with fear. They looked to Little Thumb, whose calm expression gave them hope. He whispered, "Don't worry, I left a trail of pebbles to lead us back." With the pale moonlight guiding them, Little Thumb led his brothers back along the path he had marked. The glimmering white pebbles shone just enough to show the way, and by midnight they were home. Their parents were shocked to see them, though deep down they were relieved. They hugged the boys, saying they had been worried, but inside they knew their hunger had only grown worse. Several more weeks passed, and the famine showed no sign of ending. As the family's supplies dwindled, the woodcutter and his wife felt even more helpless. Desperation gnawed at them, and once again, they decided they would have to abandon their children to survive. This time, they planned to take the boys deeper into the forest. Little Thumb again overheard their plan, but when he tried to gather pebbles, he discovered the door had been locked to prevent him from going outside. Thinking quickly, he took a small piece of bread he had saved and broke it into crumbs. As the family journeyed deeper into the forest, Little Thumb carefully dropped the crumbs along the path, hoping they would guide him home. But as dusk fell and they tried to follow the trail, they found that birds had eaten all the crumbs. The brothers grew even more frightened, realizing they were truly lost. Exhausted, they wandered aimlessly until they spotted a faint light glimmering in the distance. Gathering all the courage he could, Little Thumb led his brothers toward it, arriving at a small cottage with smoke curling from its chimney. They knocked hesitantly, and a kind-looking woman opened the door. She glanced at them with sympathy and fear, whispering, "This is the home of an ogre! If he finds you, he'll eat you all. But I can't leave you in the forest either. Come inside quickly, and I'll try to hide you." The ogre returned home that night, sniffing the air as he entered, growling, "I smell fresh meat." His wife tried to distract him, insisting it was just the stew she had cooked, but he was unconvinced. Eventually he found the boys, his eyes gleaming with hunger. He decided to wait until morning to eat them, locking them in a room for the night. Little Thumb, determined to save his brothers, waited until everyone was asleep. He noticed that the ogre's 7 daughters, sleeping in the next room, each wore a golden crown. He quietly exchanged the crowns for the nightcaps he and his brothers wore. When the ogre awoke, he went to the room in the dark, feeling for heads to grab. Mistakenly, he took hold of his own daughters, dragging them out of bed. Only after it was too late did he realize his mistake, roaring in fury. Meanwhile, Little Thumb was already leading his brothers away, running as fast as they could, enraged. The ogre slipped on his magic 7-league boots and pursued them. But the children managed to hide in a small cave as the ogre rested nearby, exhausted. Little Thumb, seeing an opportunity, snuck out and stole the ogre's boots, which magically fit his feet. With the boots, he could cover vast distances, and he led his brothers home. Upon returning, they found their parents heartbroken and overjoyed to see them. Little Thumb's bravery and cleverness had saved them all, and with the magic boots, he was able to travel far, earning enough to lift his family from poverty. They never went hungry again, and Little Thumb's story became one of the most cherished in the village. A tale of courage, resourcefulness, and love.